Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 143 of Rush Roundtable. Today, we're going to be talking about the seventh track from Power Windows, Emotion Detector. This is a very interesting song in Rush's discography. For one, it was the only song from Power Windows to have never been played live. And there's also a pretty interesting recording history of the song. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack with it. We got a great panel with us. We got Paul, Alex, Pat, and Goji. So let's just get into it and talk about one of the best songs from this album. Opening up the song, there's a very cool intro with a lot of keyboards being present, but also some really cool drumming ideas from Neil, and also some just really sweet harmonics from Alex. So, Alex, why don't you talk about the intro?
It's funny that this song, of course, is kind of like the Lifeson had said that they were going in thinking marathon would be difficult, but it was easy, and they thought this would be easy to record. This one was difficult, and I even found myself physically writing, which is now being blurred, but physically writing down and charting out the song for the sake of how would I talk about it? How would I look at and process the intro and the chord progression? Because they layered so many keyboards, and I mean it's pretty straightforward. That D C F G D, but the fact that it's basically, well, we're doing this. Here's our progression, and now we're gonna, as I say, just layer it up. um that occupies like the first eight measures, just all keyboard, and then Lifeson comes in, well, at the, I think, the eighth measure ish, kind of some sparse notes remaining in key, pretty much key of C for the intro part, and then into the verse basically, where well, there's more that can be said probably chord wise later. I think I'm gonna just defer it over to verses at this point in lyrics.
Yeah, the intro is really, really cool. Definitely builds up a lot of like maybe like I guess dramatic tension might be the best word
Mm.
for it. It's kind of an intro that I can't really point out many Rush songs that have had a similar intro to it. Sure, there's been opening buildups and stuff like that, but it's just this really unique energy to how the keyboards carry, just create a soundscape for Alex and Neil to explore through. So going into the verse, the lyrics are: when we lift the covers from our feelings, we expose our insecure spots. Trust is just as rare as devotion. Forgive us our cynical thoughts. If we need too much attention, not content with being cool, we must throw ourselves wide open and start acting like a fool. If we need too much approval, then the cuts can seem too cruel. So, Pat, what do you think about that first verse?
Well, I think Neil, since he's, I don't know, I think it was his message to let your emotions flow. Like, this is the only thing I could come out with this because I was reading a lot of it, and honestly, I think it's the only message that I see from my point of view. Maybe you guys can share a little bit if you want to say something
Yeah.
to that.
When I read out these lyrics, I definitely see things as like lines that stick out, like we expose our insecure spots and forgive us our cynical thoughts. Um, I feel like it's definitely a comment. The song is obviously about human emotions and how humans process, share, just work through their emotions. And a lot of the times, when you lift the covers from your feelings, there's there's a layer of honesty that a lot of people don't really put out there. And you get to see, like, someone might put on this big tough exterior to try and face something, but deep down, there's flaws and imperfections, and there's different ways that people can handle any sort of situation.
Chris, one thing I wrote into our notes here for this is that I was starting to think of it as far as if it's on an album called Power Windows and Neil is focusing on different elements of power. What I said was it could be the power of vulnerability, which is almost like if he was creating a new trilogy, the trilogy of vulnerability from Emotion Detector Part 3 to Open Secrets Part 4, 2, sorry, got to learn how to count, to Scars at Part 1. Just the idea
Hmm.
of, because in Bill Banashevit's book, he said very little about this other than the idea that it might be about just shattering illusions and that we have of, well, anything, certainly ourselves.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, it definitely like I feel like it also is could be playing off of the whole like the power that an insecurity can have over you.
Hmm.
Because like, you know, the whole album is about power and, you know, power windows, blah. There's some kind of joke there that my brain didn't come up with. But there is still this sense of like, you know, whenever you have any kind of insecurity or like you don't feel great about something, that holds power over you because it can hold you back from things. And this
Hmm.
first verse right here kind of gets that. Actually, I think even like the first two lines, you know, it's like when you open up to somebody who like you've just met is when you really start to show what's inside. But at the
Hmm.
same time, it also can start to show where you might not be the most comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely right out of the gate, setting the tone with the message of the song. Yeah, moving into the chorus, right to the heart of the matter, right to the beautiful part. Illusions are painfully shattered right where discovery starts. In the secret wells of emotion, buried deep in our hearts. So this kind of just, in my opinion, comes off of what I was saying earlier. In the secret wells of emotion is a very interesting way to phrase it because, you know, obviously a secret well, nobody really knows about it. That's select people to know that, including you, and then just, you know, whoever you want to know. Um, and illusions are painfully shattered right where discovery starts. That I interpret that as almost like wanting to go on like a journey of self-reflection. A lot of the times when people have mental struggles, and I can attest to this, and people are like unsure of where they're at in their life, and they have a lot of stuff they need to process. You are admitting to yourself that, you know, there's something wrong. This illusion that you have of everything's okay, you're admitting to yourself that it's not. So that illusion is shattering and coming to crash down. Um, and I see that as where the discovery of your truth begins, right where discovery starts. That's my interpretation of the chorus, at least. You guys got anything?
I think you pretty much covered pretty well. I think we should also talk about just, but Getty's vocals are awesome on this album.
Oh yeah, big
Yeah.
time.
Just beautiful vocals melodically, and it's just like that chorus, just kind of like he just kind of gives a good highlight of what he can do, right? So
Yeah.
mm.
I
That
think
performance like reflects like I don't know if it's for you guys, but it reflects like available light kind of vibe, you know,
Yeah.
with his vocals.
yeah,
Yeah,
Mhm.
I thought that too earlier.
Mm.
Yeah, for sure. And I think
I think
musically, I we didn't talk about this when we were talking about the verses going into the
Right.
chorus or whatever. Throughout the verses, Getty uses his wall bass as just the like sole accompaniment. But when he gets into the chorus section, he's playing on the wall, but he also has synth bass going at the same time and very powerful synth chords too. Definitely a big presence of the synthesizer, and I think that is probably the strongest reason as to why they didn't play it,
Oh yeah.
especially on the first tour, because there's so much going on with the synthesizers and the interplay
Yeah.
that it needs to have with the bass, and it's a pretty complicated bass part too.
yeah.
Maybe it's not like when the solo comes later, but even in those choruses, that's a lot to be going back and forth on. So I'm sure that that was probably a reason why it didn't end up being played live. But I think ultimately that was a good thing because it allowed the studio version to really, really shine and get across all the points that they wanted to make.
There's so many layers. It would be almost
Well,
impossible to play live back then,
yeah.
Yeah.
especially.
Plus,
Maybe
I
with
mean, like,
today's technology, but back then,
Yeah.
yeah.
Today would be a
Yeah.
lot easier. But
Mhm.
Plus, it's like going from the first verse into the chorus. There's like it immediately just because the whole song I feel like at the beginning kind of it's at a certain level. It just kind of rides there for a while,
mm,
and then the
Mhm.
chorus hit, and they just punch it.
Oh yeah.
Like
well,
it is like powerful.
part of that too is that when they went from that intro in C in the verses, they basically Getty had an overall G to A to B flat happening, a couple of
Mhm.
measures of B flat, and Lifeson's arpeggiated line is just a B flat sus two and a B flat major, just major chord. So at that point, Getty's obviously controlling the chord progression, whereas Lifeson's got not a static line, but Getty's changing bass changes Lifeson's chords, of course, which makes it a little more, well, it makes it interesting. It makes it fun. It might have made it a little awkward to do that live, actually. But
Yeah.
hard to say. But then in the chorus, they return to the original key with that C C C C, that hit, like Goji's saying. So just kind of a modulate, intros here, modulate to the verse, modulate back, but with more power.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of that momentum from the chorus transfers over into the second verse. So the second verse starts off, it's true that love can change us, but never quite enough. Sometimes we are too tender, sometimes we're too tough. If we get too much attention, it gets hard to overrule. So often fragile power turns to scorn and ridicule. Sometimes our big splashes are just ripples in the pool. There's a lot to unpack in that. So Goji, what do you think?
So this whole section is, I mean, as you said, there's a lot to unpack. I think sort of kind of playing off of what we were saying earlier about how like it kind of shows that like the right where discovery starts, like opening up, like that kind of thing. There is that thing of like sometimes people, when they start to they open up to people and they feel included, it can change them, but sometimes they're not quite as receptive to it. This kind of thought of just like, sometimes we're too tender, sometimes we're too soft. Like sometimes you like really hark on it and you're like super into it, and other times you're just like, that's probably more attention than I want at the moment.
Yeah.
And like you were saying earlier, especially with anyone with mental struggles, can attest, sometimes you want nothing more than to be with your friends. Other times, you love your friends, but you just need to be alone. But I think the main thing I get from this song, like not even just this verse, but like the entire song, is the sometimes our big splashes are just ripples in the pool. Like that is such a good, like, and Neil is famous for these. I don't know how many times I've said this on one of these song discussions where like Neil will just have one little line that will just ring through your head over and over and over again. But this one is like so very specific, not even for like, I mean, I think for anything, you experiment with something, it was like, oh, hey, that worked. No one was here to see it, but, it doesn't matter to anybody else, but it matters to you because you were there for that moment. Now, that you can do that.
Well, it's also a good example, and obviously all of us on here play instruments. It's a good example, like, I'm sure the guys in Rush probably would have said, I remember Eddie Van Halen saying it once that, when you're playing live, especially when you're writing songs, that live performance, you can think, oh, this song's awesome. You play it and people are just, I'm going to get a drink. And then you got some song, oh, this is lame. Well, people really love that. It's kind of that element of growth that you sort of, that like Banichevitz said in that book, that you have this idea or this illusion or this thought that this is going to be what it is, this expectation, and then smash. And it's even just if it's growth personally, just incrementally, it's part of it too.
Yeah. I like to see that last line. Sometimes our big splashes are just ripples in the pool. I like to think of that as, there's times in your lives, and I'm sure that anyone can attest to this, where you get so emotionally invested. Like you can be like furious, you can be so incredibly depressed, but you think about it like a few months later and it was like,
yeah,
well, that was stupid. Because these, in the moment, something can feel so big and important, and you need to devote all your thing. Like you can be like, I want to murder that person. Like if you're in a fight with somebody or something like that. But in the grand scheme of life, it's not really that big a deal. So what, you got to fight with what, your roommate or your mom or whatever. It's pretty inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. And I think that the song does a great job of explaining like the nuances of emotion. So just like that, where it can affect like our perception of events and our perception of other people. Like so often fragile power turns to scorn and ridicule. It's like, someone thinks that they're all high and mighty, but someone comes in, corrects them, and then all of a sudden all that power is just defeated and they have to like defend themselves and they get super angry about it. It's just really great. It's just wordsmithing. It's incredible writing. I just think it's great. I think that's a really, really strong verse.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's Neil being Neil. That's
Yeah,
what he does.
Yeah.
110%. Yeah. So right after that, there's another chorus. Oh yeah, what's up?
I just want to add one more thing to it. This is also the point where Alex really starts coming in a little heavier on the guitar. You
Yeah.
can definitely hear it a lot clearer.
Mhm.
Defying Crazy. And I think this song, this main part of the song for me was like probably the main point where I could hear like where Hold Your Fire. I forgot what it was called for a split second. Where Hold Your Fire was eventually going, with like
Yeah.
Geddy kind of playing a lot of the being on the bass, and there being kind of like the soft keys there, and then Alex just playing a chord. It's kind of holding
Yeah.
that. Like this is definitely kind of showing me where that progression is happening in the album.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh yeah. And I think even though he's just like holding big there. I mean, he does a couple of riffs, but like the big chords and stuff, where that might seem as like a low point in the song, like intensely, I think Neil and Geddy do a great job of driving it. Their drum and their bass parts pick up just enough to not be like, crashing and Geddy's doing all these crazy licks, but it's just enough to carry the song in a completely different light than, the first verse, where it was still a little bit more subdued coming off of the intro. This is after the chorus. We got a little bit more pickup, so let's continue that momentum. Because once you hit that solo and that ending part, which we'll get to, boom, you are off. It's crazy.
And that's the point. It's just that build up emotionally. The song
Yeah.
carries the emotions higher and higher.
I'm getting emotional just talking about it. It's crazy. It's so good.
Yeah.
So right after the second verse, we enter another chorus. Pretty much same lyrics right here, right to the heart of the matter, right to the beautiful part. Illusions are painfully shattered, right where discovery starts. In the secret wells of emotion, buried deep in our hearts. So, not really that much to discuss coming into a second chorus, but I think it's a really great point of reflection. Once again, the points that I brought up about emotions just being really deep down and the illusions coming down based off of that. And it does a great job going straight into the ending section with an incredible guitar solo. So, Paul, what do you think about that guitar solo?
Before we get into the solo, what's interesting is that it's rare that Neil would repeat a chorus.
Yeah.
A word like verbatim.
Right.
He always used to have a few little differences on the second version.
Yeah.
But, right. So this is interesting to know. But like you said, the second time it comes around, it seems more powerful, building up to the solo. So in preparation, I listened to this song maybe 15, 20 times today just to kind of get it really just drilled into my head. And I rediscovered the song because I hadn't listened to it in a while. So at the 3:30 mark to about the 4:20 mark, I got a 50-second span where Alex just shines. He just starts. And the first part of it, Neil and Geddy are just in the background doing Neil's doing his open hi-hat thing, and Geddy's got that little, the wall bass lick going back, and nothing fancy. Well, okay, that's wrong. So it's always fancy with Geddy and Neil, but it's not overpowering, and the solo takes over. And then they kind of transition to like the second version, and Alex keeps going, but it's such a beautiful flowing solo. It's powerful at the same time. I'm not a guitarist, but I was just like, wow, this is amazing. Like, because the second part, like the bass kind of kicks back, and then the synths kind of come back in to transition towards the outro. But this is probably like, it's a great solo. I kind of had forgotten about it over the years.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing.
The playing, Alex's playing is, I mean, it's nothing short of breathtaking. In preparation for this episode, I was listening to it a lot too, and I really got to sit down and listen to the solo for the first time, because I was always so locked into the bass. Like, I knew that the solo was great, but I was so locked into the bass because of how Geddy moves around in it and how he interplays off of some of Alex's licks and the open hi-hat pattern. I never really took time to absorb Alex's playing, and it is like, obviously it's the 80s. He's going to have a lot of whammy bar in there. That was a lot of his solos at the time were very focused on that. But the way that he uses it and carries, how he just can gently move notes around, but at the same time also hit crazy dive bombs, shows the versatility that he had, even in a time period where the music was so focused on, I need to play as fast as possible and I need to play as many notes as possible. He really takes a lot to bring out the emotion in his notes. And even in the slight little chords that he plays, there's a lot of stuff in there too. But I think this is, in my opinion, thinking about Rush's discography and moments of them like working together as a band to really not only move the song forward, but move each other forward. I think this is within those top 5 like moments of that. I think the interplay between all 3 of the members it's incredible. It's nothing short of some guy by himself with one brain playing 3 instruments at the same time and doing it perfectly. But it's 3 guys that have just locked in so hard that they feel like one solid unit. It's just incredible. As someone who's played in a lot of different bands with a lot of different people, I envy that they're able to get it that perfect. It's insane.
Alex, maybe you can ask. Maybe sorry, you can answer the question. What kind of guitar did he use in that solo? Do you remember?
And
Was it
on the recording of the album, he was on Strats at that point.
Was he on Strats? Okay.
Which the Strats were heavily modified, because he did originally he had because all right, show and tell. So I mean, he got rid of the standard bridge and he started putting on the non-locking Floyds that were around. I know he said he was putting graphite, and he and his tech were putting graphite under the strings at the nut, because it was still a little limited as to what people could do with it. But more and more people began really modifying these to keep them in tune. And certainly Eddie Van Halen set a standard. He had the Bill Lawrence pickups that were a little more high output, and then different wiring and whatnot. But it was on the tour as time as time went on. By the time they were up to Hold Your Fire, he was using the Heinl guitars, which were a Canadian company, I think somewhere around Toronto, I believe. But yeah, it was still basically Strats at that point. And like Ryder was saying, obviously there was the necessity to really do a lot of work with the bar, do a lot of dives. But I mean, in this case, I feel like they probably went into this knowing, or as they were in process, saying this isn't going to be live. Maybe he gets to be the lead guitarist alongside the chords. So we're layering keyboards, we're layering bass, we're layering guitar chords. So he kind of, working into the solo, was doing some lead guitar a la Angus Young or Slash. In so much as I reference them because, we got a dedicated rhythm guy, we got a dedicated lead guy, Izzy and Slash, Malcolm and Angus, Lifeson and Lifeson. It was they probably said this isn't going to be live. Let's just do what we can. And what Ryder was saying too, that he had everyone at that time frame notes and more notes. And Lifeson for this one saying, well, what if I have a lot of open space? Make it really melodic, really lyrical. That's powerful. Not 16th notes to 64th notes all the time.
Right.
I think it is also like pretty amazing the way that they go from, like, while Alex is still soloing, they bring the sort of the main synth riff back from the beginning, right back into it, while they're all still playing. And then Neil has his moment to just go crazy on drums for a second. And I just like, I clicked off the wrong tab. Not gonna lie. Clicked off the wrong tab. No, but they have a moment where they just kind of hold it for a second. Getty does the little bit of the lyrics, and then they just pound it once again, right back into it. Like that for me always just gets me like really excited to hear. Because like there are definitely some songs that I can just kind of have on, and it's just like I don't really get into. Not that I don't like them, it's just like okay, I've heard them enough. Every time that bit comes on, I stop what I'm doing, and I need to listen to it.
Yeah,
I wonder how many Rush fans hair drum that last part before going to the chorus, because I think he does like 16 or 30 seconds notes here, so it's like it's like holy crap. Even that part, that drum part, gets me every time. Just the drum part with the solo, this is like probably top 3 of Bridges instrumentals in Rush songs, and for me, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's really awesome.
It's up there, top 5, top 10 for sure.
Yeah. So after the solo, as Goji said, they go into this like they strip it down to like basically just da 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 that C, and how they pull it back, but then they immediately jump back in. And throughout this ending section, it's a mix of the chorus, and then Getty ad-libbing on a motif of "Feelings Run High," as they go through this triumphant, just insane outro. It's really, really great. And I think when Getty is saying "Feelings Run High" and all of its variations going through, it's just kind of putting a bow on everything. Going back on the messages of the song earlier, that emotions are this grand aspect of just human life, and how we prioritize them so much that it feels like some of the emotional weight that we're going through and that we have to carry, it becomes the highest point in our life. And just how we deal with them, how we share them with other people, how we can close them off from other people. Feelings Run High is probably the 3 words that can describe if you were to just describe the whole song in 3 words, I would say Feelings Run High. Yeah. It's just a great way to summarize everything that has gone on up to this point in the song.
And Getty sings it like that high note. It just sends shivers when he hits it. It's just like it's the whole song is you're building up the whole way right up to the end. It's beautiful.
I did a lot of the one gripe I always had with Emotion Detector was the ending. And not in any like musical sense. I always enjoyed like what they did. But I don't know if any of you guys have ever listened to it, but there is a Power Windows demo tape that was released of like very early work in progress versions of all the Power Windows songs. And Emotion Detectors is pretty cool. It stays pretty similar to the source, the final cut, I mean. But the outro, I think it's extended, like it's twice as long. And I always really loved getting to sit in that moment for longer. And I feel like if they played it live, they should have done they should have made that outro a little bit longer because it's such a cool moment. But in re-listening the song today, I kind of realized that I ultimately like the shorter time more because, it's just all this emotion build up. I don't even think they could have gone any higher than where it's at. The song is just a straight upward climb. There's nowhere they could have gone from there. So I think if anything, I'm just glad they didn't end it on a fade out because that would have killed all emotional tension right there. I'm just glad it was
dragged it out.
Yeah.
Just a ba 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 bum, and just let it just sit there and just like wow, it's such a great ending.
Well, and especially by that time they might have known that they wanted to put it right before Mystic Rhythms, which with that intro, it is the perfect cut it right off. Slight bit of space, between that part of the record, the CD, the tape, drums for Mystic Rhythms.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think one of the amazing things that I always love, like like Neil said this in his the Strombo interview he did when Moving Pictures was turning 30, where he talked about like they would one of the things that they kind of missed about when they went from record to CD was side one, side two.
Yeah.
Getting to kind of follow the journey through this. And like I could gush about this album forever. I think I made a joke about that on Middletown. I don't remember. I'm not going to for the sake of time, but I do think like coming off of Middletown into Emotion Detector and then going into Mystic Rhythms, it's just such a flow.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the whole album is a perfect flow. I'm not gonna get too much into like my closing thoughts, if that's a phrase about the whole song, but like this perfect. This is a perfect song, as with every other song on this album, but I'll save more of that for later.
Yeah. So I think, really just any closing thoughts on the song. It's definitely a standout in Rush's discography for everything that it is. How it shows off the band's playing. I think it's definitely a very strong example as to why you can point to Rush and say these are one of, if not the greatest power trio of all time. Neil's were just how he writes his lyrics, how they do such a great job of conveying meaning, but still when you're reading them, there's so much you can explore and like just think about through them. Alex's guitar solo, I mean, we already there's nothing else we can say about it. It's just, it's that good. And then just them as songwriters, they really did an excellent job with this song. I think it is, in retrospect, I think it is probably my favorite song on Power Windows. There's a lot of very, very strong competition, but I think if you were to put a gun against my head, I would probably say Emotion Detector. It's that good. It's so good.
Mm-hmm. We talked earlier about technology back then. They couldn't play it live because they just couldn't. But I'm wondering if they could have brought it back or brought it out like R40 or something like that, or even Time Machine. Would I think that would have pleased a lot of people, right?
Yeah, I think it. And on Clockwork Angels too, it would have been pretty cool because that was they brought the whole first set was pretty much all 80s and like early 90s.
Stuff they hadn't played in 20 years. Exactly.
It's really, really cool what they what this song means to a lot of Rush fans, and just like what it says about the band, and just the messages of the song about emotions and how we are as people.
It's the ultimate deep cut.
One thing I love, just quickly, I love about this song in particular is that with the beginning and a lot of it too, it's so very 80s of them to the point where the keyboard intro, the fact that Neil wasn't writing something that was more mythological or Tolkien or something like that, Samuel Taylor Coleridge, back then that turned off a lot of Rush got big, by Moving Pictures. So going into the 80s, they were fairly big. But by that time, by 85 and 87, when they got very heavy in the keyboard, that really turned off a lot of people who weren't true fans. And to me, I look at a song like this, and I love the fact that so many people who would probably be watching this, we could all say this song is absolutely awesome. And I love the fact that it's one of those songs that's good enough to weed out the people who it's sort of, you just want to hear riffing for the next 20. Well, there's a lot of bands that do that. We have more eclectic here. So it's great to see this album get its due, this song get its due, because as I say, I just think about back then, so many people just, I don't like the keyboards. Well, miss out. But at least I get to sit home and listen to them and know how awesome it is.
Yes, that's incredible.
What's also not discussed is the sound quality of the recording.
Oh yeah, phenomenal. Yeah. One of the best.
Like, Power Windows is up there top 3 sound quality recording.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Just everything just so clear and well balanced.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's great. It's Emotion Detector. It's the king.
I think I kind of touched on this a little, but this is my favorite Rush album.
Yeah.
My favorite album Total.
Yeah.
Like I adore this album. I love everything about it. I think like this song, while yes, it was never played live, like obviously I never got to see them live, so that also might
Mhm.
change my opinion a slight bit. But like I almost don't think it's like as big of a deal to me that we don't have any live recordings, that we only have like the studio version and then the demo recording.
Yeah.
Because like if I'm being honest, I'm almost like I'm sure like a live performance of the song would have definitely captured the magic of it, but in maybe in a slightly different way.
Yeah. Kind of like
'Cause, like,
how losing it from R40.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
yeah,
differences with it, like how Getty uses the bass in the second verse to kind of carry like his keyboard part. I think
yeah,
I agree with you. It would have been completely different. Not completely, but it just captures it in a different way.
yeah, but I mean, like overall, the whole song is just gorgeous. I think if no one could put a gun to my head and choose me to pick a favorite song on this
Hmm.
album, and me come out of the other end, because I can't. Because it's like a three-way tie between. Well, it's like a 3 or 4 way tie between like Marathon, Middletown, Emotion Detector, and Mystic Rhythms. I cannot pick
Yeah.
between them. Those
Hmm.
ones. They're just so like each one of them is perfect for their own reasons, yet all for the same reasons,
Right.
which is kind of rare. Like when you think about it, they're all different songs, but I
Hmm.
love them for a lot of the same things.
Yeah. It's
Don't
a very sonically cohesive album.
it
That's
is,
what
and
I
that's like
think of it as.
I think this and like I mean there were a couple other albums, but for me like this one and Clockwork
Yeah.
stand together perfectly. It's like you can it almost feels like they were recorded like literally one after another on the same day.
Yeah.
Like, you know they weren't, but it kind of feels
Yeah.
like it,
I know what you
which
mean. Yeah.
yeah, which I'm gonna stop gushing about this album because I think there's more that can be said later, but
Yeah.
I love this album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there we go, guys. Emotion Detector. What do you guys think about this great, great Rush song? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you know when new episodes for Rush Roundtable come out, and also the other shows that we have going on the channel, like Rush Deep Dive and Rush Jeopardy. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next episode. Later.